This is Let's Talk, where we get to the root causes of important issues of the day. This is an on-air community forum, and we believe your voice matters, and we welcome all thoughts and views without judgment. Please join us today by calling 415-663-8492.
That's 415-663-8492 or 8317 if the other line is busy. And you can also tweet us at Let's Talk on KWMR, because I have the tweet box fired up. And let's see. Oh, yeah, when you call in, this is very important. When you call in, you'll hear this sort of buzzy noise as I put you in the system. Just hang on until I say you're on the air, and then give us a name, and turn down your radio so we don't get all the echo going on. And please, very importantly, watch your language. We have a casualty of bad language.
Can I read that again? It seems like I was kind of stiff when I read that.
Sure, you want to do a reread?
Just kidding.
What a pro. So what are we talking about today, Steve? Oh, by the way, Shelley Rugg, happy birthday.
Oh, thank you.
Stephen Hurwitz.
Yeah.
Good to see you.
Soon.
And
71 soon.
I'm Paul Riffel. So what's it about, Stephen? This is...
We're talking about contradictions. A life of them, we all have them. You know, we don't and can't live a life of absolute consistency, although we have a bias towards it. We become uncomfortable when we find ourselves acting in ways contrary to our strongly held beliefs. The stronger those beliefs, the greater the discomfort. It's called cognitive dissonance. Consider the evangelical who gets an abortion, or the environmentalist who drinks water bottled 1,000 miles away, or flies 3,000 miles to visit a friend. Population control is for everyone but my family. There are things that sound like contradictions that might not be. For example, the smoker who fights for clean air. Ooh.
Yes, speak into
I'm
the
having
mic.
trouble. Is that better?
Yeah.
Okay. I don't see that as a contradiction. You can smoke and fight for clean air. Can you do that? Some things sound like contradictions and they aren't.
Okay.
Just thought I'd bring that up.
You can smoke and deny to yourself that it's going to do you any harm, of course.
That's justification? No, that isn't. The question is, how do we reconcile our contradictions? I find that the most interesting part.
Very good. And what does another interesting thing that you made me think about is, what does cognitive dissonance do to not only oneself but to society in general when we have one idea in our head of what, for example, our country is, and yet you know that the country is doing horrible things elsewhere or even to us, and that doesn't it set up some kind of mental schism that can affect the entire runnings of society? Seems to me it might. What do you think?
But that brings up something I was thinking about driving down here, in that what's the difference between a contradiction and hypocrisy?
Well, we already did a show on hypocrisy.
Oh, did you really?
It just has to be different. That's all there is to it. Give us a call, 415-663-8492, and give us examples of contradictions that you see in your lives, perhaps, or in the country as a whole, or in society, or in the world. I don't know how far these contradictions go. What do we want to talk about?
Well, one of the things that this subject made me think about is that these seeming contradictions are somewhat inevitable as we are developing, evolving, working on waking up to reality, let's say. Awareness is a big thing. If you're not aware of the situation, it's much easier to be in contradiction with your values. And I think many of us are still working on waking up, and also working on creating new habits, new ways of doing things, because I know I grew up, eating Doritos and Fritos and Ding Dongs and Twinkies and all of these things, just as an example. And that's not what I would eat today, because I'm more aware of what I'm putting in my body. But that awareness has not reached some sort of level of perfection, let's say.
You still eat a Dorito now.
The question is, if you ate a Twinkie, would you feel discomfort? Would there
Yes.
be cognitive dissonance in that?
There would be physical dissonance. Yeah, I would feel it physically in my body.
Well, what about mentally?
Well, that one I think is yeah, I think so. If I was to talk myself into unwrapping that Twinkie and sticking it in my face, I would question myself strongly. Yeah.
Yes.
But okay. So what about cars?
Well, there would be an element of shame in it, wouldn't there? I mean, would you be ashamed if someone caught you eating a Twinkie? There would be a sort of
yes, I felt that shame once when I was in the market. This was years ago now, before the awakening. Disclaimer.
awakening. Yeah.
But yes, I was in a lull. I was in a down place, and I went to the market and I put a roll of Pillsbury chocolate chip cookie dough in my cart with the intention of taking it home and nibbling on it just right out of the tube.
Oh my
That
God!
is evil.
Well, yes. So the scary part was
That's
when I
just
ran
wrong.
into a friend, and there's this tube of cooking dough just staring them in the face. I'm sure they've got my whole story figured out. Yes, the shame.
The shame in the shopping line. Yeah, so feelings of shame are feelings of these contradictions that set themselves up when you have beliefs and yet you behave perhaps in other ways as such.
Right, right.
And yeah, it's interesting. I mean, shame would be one of them. What's the workaround to contradictions? You eat your Pillsbury dough and you go, well, just this once. Or you say,
Exactly, minimization.
One more cigarette's not going to hurt. Or, I'm going to fly to London because, I haven't seen London for a long time. And yes, I know that plane travel is the worst polluter of all, but the plane's going to be there anyway, right? So, right?
It is.
So
yeah.
rationalizing. Yeah.
Yes, it's so
Plane
easy.
is going to be
isn't it?
there anyway.
It's so easy to do, but so what does that? As I said, my fascination is what it does to your way of thinking about things, and what it does to like the voting public. Can we do that now? Can we already get into the dissonance of being a voter who doesn't like liberal wealthy elites, and yet will vote in
one
a
in
guy who
office.
used to be a Democrat and is a billionaire, and he was a Democrat, and put a billionaire in office and expect to, and because he's going to fix everything, or Hillary, yes,
Voting for
exactly.
Hillary.
And to that point, Murray Seward, one of our great contributors, thank you, Murray. Always, he writes in when we have interesting topics like this. He thinks there might be much less contradictoriness, is that a word? Well,
I'll accept that.
Than your presentation suggests. For example, I found that people who object to mistreatment of animals, I gave an example of mistreatment of animals, and yet you eat Tyson's chicken, which we all know comes from these horrible factory farms and awful stuff going on, cutting their beaks and oh dear. Mistreatment of animals tend to eat organically farmed meat. Well, that's certainly true out here. I mean, yes, for sure. My guess. On the other hand, my guess is that if you interviewed people eating at McDonald's, most of them don't spend a lot of time worrying about animal rights. Ooh, I don't know. That's a bit of a social commentary that.
Well, no.
A generalization, I'd say.
I think one of the keys is that it has to be a strongly held belief you have to really feel, for example, my example of the evangelical who has an abortion. I think 30% of the abortions are from evangelicals. When you
What?
consider that, yeah, it's a very high percentage of people who seek abortions.
I'd like to see this study. Where?
I've read it in numerous times.
Oh,
There
yeah.
is such a strong social stigma to having a child out of wedlock in that group.
Wow.
That is stronger. Okay, there's your way you justify that.
It's a greater stigma to having a
Correct.
child out of wedlock
Correct.
than it is to have an abortion, and yet,
Well, in the
who is leading the charge against abortions more than? I mean, isn't evangelical Christianity? Isn't that?
Yeah, that is a very
is that a
surprising.
contradiction in itself?
Woof. Well, yeah, don't get me started on Christianity. Okay. Homelessness. I gave the example of homelessness, and yet we look the other way. You know, we kind of, oh, it's so dirty. Oh, hope they don't come to my neighborhood. Not everyone who decries homelessness looks the other way. Yeah, of course. I think I said might. You might perceive, blah, blah, blah. You might profess to follow beneficent holy teachings, but threaten divine retribution for perceived transgressions. That's the great thing about religion. You can be a wonderful, good person, and yet your God, the wonderful, lovely, kind God, will smite you down if you eat shellfish. No? Yeah,
Or
you
if
didn't
you're
know?
selfish.
Or
Sorry,
Yeah.
couldn't resist.
Yeah,
Excellent.
no,
It's your birthday. We'll let you get away with that. That's okay. And about distrusting wealthy elites but voting for them. In some cases, the only viable choices are both elites, as in Trump and Clinton, right? Yeah, so
Yeah.
you could vote for a third-party candidate, of course, and that candidate might not be an elite, but the voter who distrusts elites might not want to vote for someone who won't be elected. Yeah.
Can you feel cognitive dissonance by voting for a third party, knowing you're going to undermine the candidate who might be fighting the...
Who might have got in instead
That's
of
right.
what we have now? Yeah,
I think
know,
more
it's-
than anything, it's frustration.
Well, it's
You know,
yeah, right.
lack of options.
Yeah. And
Difficult situation.
You know, the outcry against Nader voters years ago keeps people from voting for third parties, I think. But
Where's
I'm all for
Ross
more-
Perot now that
Ross
we really need him?
I know someone who hates the one percenters, but hated Ms. Clinton more than Mr. Trump, the millionaire versus the billionaire. She voted for Trump, or he or she voted for Trump. Wow. Not really a contradiction, just a lack of good choices, as you said. And I gave the example of American exceptionalism, and yet, you know, the things that we're visiting upon the world kind of don't balance. And the breakdown of all public systems, transport, education, welfare, justice, far lower statistics of how they work, far worse than any other developed country. He says, often folks living in the old Confederate states do not know the statistics that you reference. They don't really read the New York Times or New York or Atlantic, so for them there is no contradiction.
Well, you brought
Another
up
generalization
this. You
again,
brought
but
up this
fair enough.
American.
Thank you, Murray.
I'm sorry. You brought up this American exceptionalism. I think you have to be a politician in order to have the contradiction.
Oh, really?
Yeah, I can't affect that. I have a strongly
Well, you
held
can't
belief,
affect
but
it,
I
but,
have to
yeah.
be able to do something in contrary to that belief. I don't have that power.
It's just that certainly politicians whip it up, this patriotic fervor, right? That this is the greatest country in the world, bringing democracy everywhere. And yet...
Gee, wait a second. Where was that?
Yeah, that's what we're doing. All these wars are
I
about
was
bringing
going for the
democracy.
accent.
Oh, the accent. Well, now. I am a multi-talented person, yes. There are two polls, one by Gallup, one by Pew Research Center, that interviewed tens of thousands of people in 60 different countries. And in both of them, in one of them, in the Gallup poll, 24% of the respondents said that the question was, which country is the greatest threat to world peace? 24% of hundreds of thousands of people around the world said the USA. And the next one, 24%. The next one was like 8%, and it was Pakistan. You know,
Wow.
this was before North Korea went bozo. But and then Pew, same thing. They asked a different question. Do you think the United States is a threat to peace or a threat to your country? Something like that. And then it asked about Russia, and then it asked about China. And 36%, I think, of people said yeah. So, you know, America, the greatest country in the world. And certainly we're showing everyone that we are the greatest, aren't we?
Oh.
But
Don't ask me. Don't look at me.
Anyway, do give us a call, won't you? We're talking about contradictions. It's 415-663-8492. And please, keep the language clean. We may say things you don't agree with, and we will listen to any points of view without judgment, and we're always interested in all sides of the question.
I love it that we consider that we're promoting democracy across the world. Those those embassies, they exist really as headquarters for CIA.
CIA and corporations, yeah.
It's
For
not
trade,
even,
yeah.
they're not even
World Bank.
pretending anymore.
No, they're all fortified buildings, and they're
I don't
and
thi-
full of electronics that are.
I don't think we've even chosen ambassadors to half the countries.
Yet. Right, he fired them all, did he? Did he, or did he not? Did he bring them all back? I don't know. Certainly the ones who look like they might be troubling. There's a book called The Opposable Mind by Roger Martin, which is mostly about business leaders and how mostly men, of course, but people who have the ability to hold two opposing thoughts in the mind at the same time, and actually think about both of them and then come up with option C, option A or option B, which may counteract each other, and that usually the ones who succeed come up with an option C instead of trying to justify one or the other of B. I'm not sure how all that works. Integrative thinking, he calls it integrative thinking, holding a lot of complex details in the brain at the same time rather than trying to keep it as simple as possible. He thinks the greatest thinkers of our time have this integrative thinking capability and thus have opposable minds.
Oh, like women.
Exactly. Thank you so much. Yes, please. Read Seduction Redefined, available on Amazon.
I'm glad you said that.
Multitasking.
Right.
Ability to hold two opposable thoughts and to actually work with it. In fact, he points out that it's actually a good business strategy to go into meetings and to whip up opposable points.
Wow.
Just to hear all sides of everything, right?
I don't
which
think
is what this show is about, by the way. Give us a call, 415-663-8492.
I think that is helpful to do that. You bring
Bring
it all together. You have something to talk about, something to work out. It's everybody doesn't have to come in with a specific conclusion.
I think it's all, I never have thought about it before, but what I'm realizing is that by opening those doors, it allows people to bring forth their actual, their true thoughts and feelings, whereas if you kind of wanted to establish consensus right away, you might not go that way. Mm-hmm. But I think that does make sense in terms of really opening the floor to all the viewpoints.
Yeah, and actually giving them a listening instead of giving them a hearing instead of being. I think that it's been this way for a while. When Donna and I were writing Seduction Redefined, we were doing research into Harvard. Business school did a study of the best way to run companies. This was many years ago. And the day of the autocratic, so the tyrant at the top just directing everyone, like...
Uber.
What was that movie? With Charles Lawton? Oh, yes, we were just watching it last night. Anyway, he was this autocratic, just demanding everything down to the minute, and everything had to be his way or you were fired. That was it. Which, again... brings us to thinking about our president and his style. He is still operating in the old mode of, I'm the one who gives the orders, and anyone who doesn't like it, you're fired, and not interested in opposing views. So maybe contradictions are healthier than not having contradictions in your head.
The scary thing about reading about him is that they talk over and over about having tirades. I mean, that is scary. I hope he doesn't have a tirade regarding Kim Il-sung.
I mean, it wasn't a tirade, but whoever wrote that speech, because he was reading the words on the prompter, fire and fury, because he couldn't remember those words.
But can you imagine a president that's screaming at his staff?
Yeah. That's how he's always run his businesses, and some of us knew that. Anyway, but he has no contradictions in his mind, I'm guessing, and everything that he does is right. Everything that he says is correct, and nothing he says is false. And everything that anyone says against him is false.
If you're ignorant of the alternative, then you kind of can't be faulted for that.
Especially when you're surrounded by people like Stephen Miller and all the other sycophants who are crowding around him, man.
I have to say, though, I am enjoying a little bit that he and Mitch McConnell are on the outs.
This is part of his draining the swamp. Yes, well, career politicians are, that is their game, is compromise, right? I mean, it used to be anyway, until Newt Gingrich came along back in, 90s, whatever it was. But all this thing where there's complete polarity, and if you work with the other side, you're a traitor to your party. That didn't used to happen. That was what politics was all about, and diplomacy, right? I mean, it was all about taking two opposing viewpoints, two contradictory viewpoints, and finding middle ground that you could both kind of get along with.
So would you say that there are more than one Republican parties? You have the Tea Party at one end, who really can't be considered Republicans, or they can, but the other side aren't Republicans. It just seems that it's fragmented. We might have two or three parties within that one.
What does it mean anymore? I mean, the Republican Party basically means conservatives, right?
Or ultra-conservatives.
Or ultra-conservatives. Well, it's the right wing of the right-wing party.
Okay.
I don't know, yeah, and the Democratic Party certainly is split. My goodness. And the old values of the Democratic Party, the worker came first, and that is not the case anymore. With the leadership, anyway. So, there we are. We're talking about the contradictions we all face in life, in personal life, too, the choices that we make, the behaviors we have. We know that fossil fuels we've been told that our carbon dioxide emissions are driving climate change, and yet we're still... How did we get to the station this morning?
Drove a car.
Yeah.
Mike, at least it's smogs.
Yes. We have... Yeah, California smog, I mean, here's a rationalization. Well, at least the California smog rules are good, the best in the country. Oh, yeah.
Justification.
They are the best in the country, but...
Well, and it's also, reprogramming, retraining, forming new habits, getting a different way of getting around. That's kind of a big change to make for, a lot of people. For
a country that was founded by railways, public transportation or mass transportation, and then became, thanks to Rockefellers and those guys, they tore up the railways and put in roads, and then built suburbs. Yeah.
And on it goes.
Oil, good old oil. We love those fossil fuels. But so we're still burning them, and one of my favorite, I've said this before, one of my favorite websites is the real-time flight, USA flights. You can actually, I think it's flightaware.com. You can search for your own flights or somebody who's flying in, but you can also see a picture of the world actually, but of the States itself, and the number of planes in the sky at any one time. Unbelievable. Which
is this disturbing?
It's kind of disturbing. I mean, only because the little decals, the little images of the planes are totally out of scale. They're sort of half the size of, or an eighth of the size of Iowa. Each plane image. So it looks like all the sky is covered in planes. But really,
so have you made a personal commitment not to fly?
Yes, I just can't afford to fly. That's bad.
There we go.
No, I haven't.
Maybe that's a contradiction here.
This is it. I haven't made a vow not to fly. I'm going to drive up to see the eclipse, the total eclipse. I mean,
I think that, why I wouldn't be aware of the problem, the pollution problem of airplanes. You could question that. But I think there's so many things to need to become aware of. And I think that in our culture, we've been pretty severely brainwashed to think certain ways and do things certain ways and be good consumers and you got to get the new car, you got to get the new phone, and so there's some pretty strong habits that need to be broken and eyes that need to be opened in order for us to embrace, living in a way that feels like we're actually a positive force on the planet and less harmful. But without the awareness,
right.
what can you do?
Yeah.
So
you can deny. If you're aware, you can deny. I think that's what's happening right now. It's we're in denial because the implications are less jobs, less consumption, less growth in the economy. These are all things that are the implications if we really look global warming in the face. There's a constituency that is harmed by that. So therefore, the people who support that constituency don't want to look it in the face.
Don't want to look at the harm, compare it with the harm that's already being done.
I think we're stuck in so many ways. So I think in many ways, just there's no way out. Take the defense budget, for example. It's really a jobs program. Bringing home the bacon is to bring home well-paying defense projects, and congressmen fight for these industries in their home turf. You cut the defense budget, and all of a sudden, you're cutting jobs in my.
Yeah.
How do you change a prospect like that? It's too close to home for too many people.
Well, and that's I'm sure that a lot of politicians have cognitive dissonance going on all the time because that's kind of the name of the game, isn't it? You're posing as someone who cares about several things, and yet with the stroke of a pen, you're kind of doing away with things that you're
definitely
supposed to be fighting for. And this is KWMR in Point Reyes Station, 90.5 FM, Point Reyes Station, 89.9 Bolinas, and 92.3 in San Geronimo Valley, streaming live on KWMR.org and cablecasting on Horizon Cable, Channel 47. And KWMR is supported by Dance Palace Community and Cultural Center, located at 5th and B Streets in Point Reyes Station. Member supported, the Dance Palace offers classes, events, and facility rentals for all the communities of West Marin. Membership information, volunteer opportunities, and schedules available at 415-663-1075. That's 415-663-1075, or online at dancepalace.org. And KWMR, also supported by the Sustainable Sports Foundation, which puts on the Marin County Half Marathon, the Marin County Triathlon Weekend, and the Celebrity Doodle Auction. All net proceeds from these events provide swim lessons for children from low-income families with an emphasis on water safety. More information online at sustainablesports.org. And Here comes another pledge drive. KWMR's summer pledge drive is coming up. Are you ready? We're looking to raise $20,000 in 4 days, from Friday, August the 18th through Monday, August 21st. If you want to get an early start, you can donate now by visiting our website, kwmr.org, and clicking on the donate button, or by calling us at 415-663-8068. Extension 105, and stay tuned for all the action. Yes, pledge drive coming up. And we also have a fundraising dinner at the Saltwater Oyster Depot on Wednesday, August the 23rd, 6:30 to 9 p.m. Come and reserve a seat at the table for a fundraising dinner for KWMR. We'll also be at the Parachute Days at Love Field on August 26th. And at Iron Springs Brewery on Tuesday, August the 29th for a Give Back Tuesday, where some of the proceeds will come to KWMR. Wonderful. We're all striving to make the budget. It's all good.
As long as we're making a public service announcement, probably one of the most fun shows of the year, the Bach Show at Gallery Route 1.
Yeah.
It's up, and it opens this weekend.
This Saturday, yeah?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. Excellent.
3
the
to
Bach
5.
Show. How many years has that been going on now? 20?
I don't know.
30? No, 25?
I should know that.
Yeah, you should.
There's a lot of things I should know.
Well, so many things to worry about.
Well, you know, this whole thing of contradictions, though, it seems like it's really a test of our beliefs in many ways. We do stuff we think are contradictions, but maybe we just don't believe that strongly in them.
Ah. There you are. So no cognitive dissonance, really. Maybe it's just the way you look to the world, the face that you show to the world of concern, and meanwhile you're going against your own what you're portraying. Interesting. That's a little sociopathic, I think, isn't it?
I have to.
But maybe that's what's going on. Maybe that's how civilization works.
Self-examination. I feel that way. A lot of things that I would consider a contradiction, I'm certainly not losing sleep over if I behave in ways against things that I believe in. Not everything, but I have to say that. Do any of our listeners? Confession
Anybody
time?
out there?
Yes, the confessional is open. You don't have to give your real name. Just give us any name. 415-663-8492. Give us a call with your opinions, your thoughts on the contradictions you face in your own life and across the whatever span of the world you want to look at. 415-663-8492. And keep the language clean, please. No, none of the 7 dirty words. And if you don't know what those are, look on YouTube. Look up George Carlin, 7 dirty words. Then you'll know. And then they'll be in your head, and they'll just come out without your knowing. Oh boy.
I'm personally working on a transition towards veganism, and I struggle with dairy.
With giving it up.
Yes, I struggle with giving up dairy.
I hear
so
you
that's
on
kind of
that.
where
I
I'm
can hear
at.
that.
Yeah.
What especially? Yogurt? Milk? Butter?
Speaking of butter, I made a cake the other day, and I ran out of butter.
Oh.
But I had coconut oil,
Yeah.
and I discovered that I easily was able to make the frosting that called for butter by replacing it with the coconut oil.
Delicious.
It came out great, and so a little light bulb went off. Maybe I could just replace the butter with coconut oil and everything.
Yeah.
And let's try that and see what happens. So that's one down if I
That's
can
good.
stick with it.
Yeah, stay away. Well, coconut oil is good.
But cheese.
Cheese. So milk and eggs.
Eggs. I mean, the
Is
thing
this
with the eggs.
health related, or is it more? It's a moral
Well, there's a
ethical
couple of moral or ethical issues. Of course, the treatment of animals, how they are handled in the animal agriculture, but there's also environmental impact of animal agriculture to think about. And if you care about the environment, then you're in contradiction if you're not doing all you can to support that.
I hear you on that one.
Health, definitely, I know I would be healthier in my body if I had a more plant-based diet.
Absolutely.
And those people I know who taken that step report that they do feel so much better. So I think, back to your idea about how strong is the belief or the value that you hold. And so my thought is I'm not super strong in it yet. I'm not super clear about why it's important to me, maybe.
How about eating a cheeseburger? Does that fit in?
No.
Do you eat red meat right now?
I don't. You have a caller?
We do, but you don't eat much red meat anyway?
Well, I stopped eating the red meat when I really noticed how it felt in my intestinal tract. And I noticed that. And ever since then, I've avoided it. Now, what if I get invited over to someone's house and they serve me red meat? I'll probably eat it.
So, yeah.
Well, then you have a long way to go towards vegan.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I don't have a really stable, solid conviction there. Yeah.
So, caller, you're on the air. What's your name, please?
It's Amanda.
Hi, Amanda. Keep it
Hi.
clean, please.
Amanda Eichstead.
Oh, no, she said Eichstätt. What does it mean?
That is my last name. I am calling to respond to you, Shelley, because I, too, have transitioned in some ways to a more plant-based diet. I have some very strongly convicted vegan friends who are completely on board, and it's like no leather shoes, no sheepskin, really to the point of no animal products anywhere. And my initial foray into it was informed by their interest and sort of, inspiration, but also by reading about ultra athletes who have been transitioned to more plant-based diets and got a great deal of performance out of that diet for health purposes for your body. And I kind of was just like really into it, doing everything I could in terms of the preparation of the food and buying things that fit that. And I've kind of reached a balance in my life just for myself. And I think this is sort of along the line of a lot of these sort of contradiction things. It's like you kind of have to figure out what works for you. And, whether you're going to say, and often, with the vegan thing, it's like, okay, I'm going to say that I'm a whole foods, plant-based primary eater. But, like, if I come to your house and you put, ground beef into your spaghetti sauce, I'm going to eat it.
As long as you can still digest it, right?
Yeah, as long as it's not a health issue for me. Like, I feel that just personally, for me, making the choice of not being a picky eater, but also being a conscious eater.
Yeah.
And I'm not going to call you up if you are having a party and tell you that I have these things that I need, because personally, I'm not going to get ill if I do this.
I don't eat red meat, but if I'm someplace where it's served, I'll pass on it. I've made a certain commitment, and I just want to keep that commitment.
Yeah, I will avoid it, when I can and it's appropriate. Like, went to a big barbecue and had a veggie burger, those types of things. But I think that when there was ample supplies of very well prepared other items that were barbecued, that were more meat, animal meat. But I think that you think about it, it's like, okay, I'm gonna ride my bike everywhere. I'm never gonna drive, or I'm never gonna fly in an airplane. It's sort of like, I'm never going to throw away a plastic bag. I'm going to reuse it until it disintegrates in my home. Just these things, like, we can try to have...
And then throw it away, yeah. Right.
But it's like this everything in moderation to a certain degree, because I think that sometimes just the stress that we put on ourselves from having these convictions is overwhelming, and you need to sort of balance out just your overall psychic health with your physical health, with your health in your community. You know, you're not going to agree with everybody. You're not going to be able to find exactly the right thing to eat everywhere you go. You know, you just sort of have to roll with it a little bit more.
It's difficult. There's more danger of cognitive dissonance if you're dogmatic, at least verbally dogmatic about your beliefs or your habits or your ethics or whatever.
Yeah, and often if you just
sooner or later you're
do your thing, if you do your thing without having to make a big stink about it, sometimes those are the true people.
Yeah. Well, thank you, Amanda. We have another caller. Thanks very much. That was Amanda. And we have another caller. Hi, caller, you're on the air. What's your name, please? Hello.
Oh, hi. Hi, it's Gail.
Oh, you need to turn off the radio. You did already. Thank you.
Yes.
Gail who?
The instructions, well.
So keep it clean, please.
Okay. So, yeah, I think that was really interesting, and I love the connection between the being dogmatic and increasing the dissonance, actually. So I'm not sure if this was addressed or not earlier in the call, but I'm really wondering about, you know, in other words, the feeling of sometimes just being so, in other words, we fight for what we believe in. It's not only just what we do, but how we represent ourselves. So, for instance, I saw something in the news this morning about some product that Monsanto's made that's like a super weed killer, and because it's sprayed over to the fields next to them, entire fields, orchards, were just dead. And I really experienced just feeling so discouraged, so overwhelmed, you know, really almost defeated. So, you know, this idea of cognitive dissonance, this idea of living in a way that's consistent with your beliefs, I'm just wondering how people handle the enormous amount of things that don't fit or make sense anymore, and, you know, find a place for themselves where they feel like they're doing as much as they can do, or doing,
Right.
you know, being consistent to the degree that they can be.
Yeah. Well, that's the big question, isn't it? How do you work your way around it? Just imagine what it's like to be someone who lives in the I've forgotten what state Monsanto is in, but you work at the headquarters because it's in your hometown. Just imagine, I don't know, if you have any kind of feeling for the planet or the world, this is my opinion, let me just say, that working for Monsanto and knowing what they do, and knowing that this Roundup, for example, I mean, now they have the super Roundup to go with their genetic GMO crops, so they can spray more. I mean, just knowing what that stuff does, which is finally coming out, that must be, I mean, for me, that would be torture. I can't, you know, I wouldn't even, I wouldn't work for them because I'm old enough to say no. But if there were no choice, if I were living in that town and for some reason couldn't get out of town and had to have a job and Monsanto was the only game in town, wow. Woo. Like working for the...
But the Koch
Well,
brothers...
maybe you'd hope that you could, you know, create change from the inside.
Well, yeah, I mean, that's right. That's what everyone would say, right? I know someone who gets a check, gets dividends every month from Monsanto, and yet, you know, he's certainly not on board with the pesticide thing. He doesn't use them, I don't think.
Hillary's been on the board of Monsanto for years.
Yes, exactly. And there's a revolving door into all the parties and all the governments. There's always a Monsanto guy somewhere in the ag department. No, it's amazing. And if we, as we are supposed to, we're supposed to think of corporations as people. No wonder some of these corporations are as sociopathic and pathological as they are, because they are experiencing an organizational cognitive dissonance. Ooh, how about that? What do you
It'd be
think?
nice to arrest a whole company, whole
man.
corporation.
Well, I think, in response to your question about, how do we deal with this overwhelming onslaught of things that, we should be concerned with and trying to live differently and, can only do so much. And I think that probably the answer is to really be loving with yourself and forgive yourself for not knowing everything that there is to know, and
That's a very good point.
Not being up to speed with all there's so many things, that we need to address. And so I think just continually opening your, expanding your awareness and continually attempting to move towards, being the kind of citizen on the planet that you think is a good one to be. Just knowing that it's an evolutionary process, that it's an ongoing expansion, and that there's no end game, really.
Mm-hmm.
I have a trouble with this imbalance of power. It's just me. I'm the little guy, and I can make all these changes. I can pick up all the debris on the side of the road. I can make big changes in my life, and yet the powers that be are so huge, and their decisions count so much more than mine. And the momentum in terms of the planet regarding those people, I have a really tough time with that. I'm very discouraged, honestly, about the whole planet and where we're going and what's implied.
Yeah, right. Well, as always, we come back to localization, right? That you do what you can in your own area and locally and hope that it ripples out. I mean, without everyone deciding that they were willing to pay more for organic food, there would not be an organic food movement. Right? I mean, without people actually saying, I want clean food.
Well, we're putting our money where our mouth is in that.
Yeah. So, anyway, Gail, yes.
Thank you. That was great. Great show.
Oh, thank you. Thanks for calling.
Thanks for calling in.
Bye now. Yeah, and I'll talk about corporate cognitive dissonance. How about VW with their, botching the emissions on their diesels? There's an example of, I mean, they're actually advertising these things as clean and green, and well, of course they're not, but we knew that already. But actually, they were fiddling. I mean, that's an example where, if you, like I said, if you think of corporations as we are supposed to in our in the Constitution and in the Supreme Court, corporations are people and have the same rights as people, then they are schizophrenic and sociopathic. Most of them, the big guys, the big ag and big chem, big pharma, all those guys, decrying the opioid epidemic and yet feeding it all at the same time and making huge amounts of money off it. There's one that I forgot to bring up, but there's a great one. In the mid-50s, these cults come up where the end of the world's coming and the aliens are going to save us all. Right?
Okay.
Remember that? There was that one, Heaven's Gate or something.
I think they are going to.
There's a cult that was persuaded by their leader, a certain Mrs. Keach, that the Earth was going to be destroyed on the 21st of December and that they alone were going to be rescued by aliens. It actually increased their commitment to the cult when this did not happen. The dissonance of the thought of being so stupid was so great that instead they revised their beliefs to meet with obvious facts that the aliens had, through their concern for the cult, saved the world instead. And that happened not long ago. When was the last? Oh, the end of the Mayan calendar. There was a cult that said, well, it's all coming to an end, but we'll be saved by aliens. And, of course, the world didn't come to an end, or maybe it did, and we just don't realize it yet.
It's on its way. It's just
We're
a little behind schedule.
We just didn't want to rush it.
Well,
Okay.
I think when you feel so helpless and hopeless and like, what good is my little, business that I'm doing in my household? Maybe it's time to just focus on celebrating, focus on, finding that beauty in your own life, because if the planet's gonna self-destruct,
Might as well
Might
be
as well
playing music.
Yes, might as well be singing the song.
The planet doesn't care. It's really
no.
human
Of course
beings
not.
that care.
Yeah,
I
yeah.
think we do what makes us feel good. If it makes us feel good to, do things that we consider planetary positive, then that's what we do. If it makes us feel better to ignore the problems, then that's what people do. I think we're just in the place of doing what we feel good about.
Mm.
Well, I know I've talked to people who kind of take the stand that their action isn't going to really make a dent in anything, so why bother? But exponentially, it does make a difference. Over time, it can make a difference.
You have to believe in the ripples, right? Give us a call, 415-663-8492. We've got a couple of minutes left, so please give us a call. Tell us about your contradictions in your life and all that you see around you. Yeah, I think you have to believe in that everything makes a difference, because there's actual quantum physics now are discovering that every action over here affects something over there. It really does. So, you have to think that the ripples will spread. Who knew?
Why do you have to think that?
Well, you don't have to, of course.
But here's a contradiction. I'll act personally positively towards the planet, yet my personal belief is
It's not going to make a bit of difference.
it's not going to make a difference.
Well, there you go.
It makes me feel good to do that.
Well, that's good. And I want a medal. I want something he gave that others might live. Nothing too schmaltzy. But no, you just do things. If you're aware of things that are going on that are obviously bad, you try to do something about it, right? I mean, that's just, what else can you do?
Some people do. I just flashed on this memory of driving through Texas. I was hitchhiking at the time, and the truck driver throws trash out the window. And, I'm a California girl. And I'm like, what are you doing? And he says, oh, we got to give those, people a job. There's people that pick up that trash, and if I don't throw my trash out there, they won't have a job. So I'm
a job maker.
Job creator.
Job creator. Oh.
Well, that's one way to justify your actions, yes. Well, that's, yes, of course. Of course, ignorance is bliss, as Murray said at the end of his letter. Maybe ignorance is bliss, a little ignorance. We're all ignorant of something, so that's a little blissful, isn't it?
Yes.
When you're not actually reading statistics. That's the great thing about this show is that we do homework every week and find out all these terrible things that are going.
Paul does homework.
Oh my God. I'm so depressed now.
Oh.
But it doesn't mean I'm not going to get my hair cut today, which I am. So there you go.
Oh, there will be a tomorrow.
There is hope.
And I'm not standing on the street corner saying with a sign, the end is near.
The world ended yesterday. Well, so cognitive dissonance. I don't know.
So what contradictions are you up against in your life right now?
Oh, well, the usual things that we all have, which is driving cars and driving old car. The vehicle I drive does not get good gas mileage, but that's the vehicle I have. So
maybe it's a trade-off. I think that's one of the ways that we reconcile it. You're not buying a new car. If you bought a new one, the pollution would be greater than the pollution that you're making by driving a car with low gas mileage.
Excellent.
That's a justification.
Thank you so much for that.
So don't feel bad.
Wow,
This is wonderful. I feel so good now.
I can see it in your face, yes.
And I
There's a
go
light
camping
around.
in it, so it's, I'm not, no, I'm not, I'm contributing to the downfall of the hotel industry, I guess. Maybe that's not such a great thing.
Yes, it's all connected.
I see a smile on his face now.
I feel so great. I don't feel bad about it anymore. No, but the usual things. I mean, I certainly, I would never use pesticides, for example, although my house was tented for termites. And
Otherwise your house would fall down.
I could have said, how dare you, and I'm leaving this place immediately, but, I didn't do that.
Yeah, what would the alternative be? You'd have to go in with some tweezers and open the walls and pick out the little termites
They
one
were,
by
they were
one.
very, they were having a wonderful time, yes. The house was definitely suffering, so...
There you go.
There's justification again.
You told yourself that something worse. That's another way we justify it.
It's not the... Yes, I was actually acting, or I didn't do anything to stop it, let's put it that way. But then I'm only a tenant, so what could I do?
There we go.
Justification.
Yeah.
Oh, this is great. This is so easy now. Anyway, this was Let's Talk, and I just want to say KWMR does not take a stand on any of the issues discussed on Let's Talk. Whatever we said, don't hold it against the station when Pledge Drive comes on 18th of August. Opinions expressed on this program are those of the hosts and callers and don't necessarily reflect the views of KWMR, its board of directors, underwriters, or members. Thank you to the listeners, thank you to the callers, and thank you to both of you. And do you have plans for your birthday? You're going to eat a big steak? Steak with a big dollop of whipped cream on top, or sour cream on top?
The last red meat I sunk my teeth into were some ribs that my boyfriend's brother barbecued, and I have to say they were delectable.
There you go.
Yeah, but...
not
that was about a year
indispensable.
ago.
I grew up, we didn't have pork in our house except bacon. Somehow bacon passed the test.
Which is, by the way, processed meats, class 1 carcinogens. Anyway, we'll leave you with that
goody.
thought. Thank you, everybody, and we'll be back next Thursday at 11 a.m. Bye for now.